Claire never liked standing in front of a crowd. She was the type of girl who stayed quiet at family gatherings and avoided too much attention. Yet that afternoon she found herself in a place she had never imagined. She was standing at a wedding hall, behind a photography booth, wearing a name tag that did not even belong to her. It all began when her cousin called her early in the morning. The cousin was supposed to work at the photo booth during the wedding, but an emergency kept her away. She begged Claire to take her place just for the evening. Claire had tried to say no at first. She had no experience. She had never even helped at a wedding before. But her cousin's voice was desperate, and Claire had a hard time saying no to people she cared about, so she agreed. Now she stood there, with balloons and silly glasses arranged on the table. Cameras flashing around her, and strangers smiling at her as if she belonged in that spot. She tried to keep a steady smile on her face, even when her hands shook a little. Inside her chest, her heart was beating faster than normal. The wedding hall was bright and beautiful. Lights hung from the ceiling, and flowers decorated every table. Guests laughed and clinked their glasses. Children ran around with wide grins, while the music played softly in the background. Claire felt small in the middle of it all, like she had entered a world that was not hers. Still, she kept handing props to the guests who came near her booth. A couple put on oversized hats and laughed loudly as they posed for the camera. A group of young friends tried silly poses and dragged Claire into one of the photos. She laughed shyly, realizing she was slowly getting used to this unexpected role. Deep inside, however, she wondered if anyone would notice that she was not the real worker. She had no special skills, no training. She was only standing in for someone else. She reminded herself of the promise she made to her cousin. It would only be for a few hours. She would help out, then go home. Nothing more. But fate had a different plan. Across the hall, Ethan entered with his little daughter. He was dressed neatly in a dark suit, his tie perfectly straight, his face calm, but a little tired. At first, he did not plan to stay long at the wedding. He only came because the groom was his longtime friend. Ethan preferred to spend quiet evenings with his daughter rather than mingle with strangers. Still, he wanted to show respect. His daughter, Lily, had other ideas. She spotted the photo booth from across the room and pulled his hand with excitement. Ethan sighed softly but followed her. Anything to see her smile was worth it. Claire looked up when she saw them walking toward her. The man's presence caught her off guard. He had a strong, steady look about him, like someone used to making decisions and carrying weight on his shoulders. Yet his hand was gentle as it held the little girl's. The girl's face lit up with joy as she looked at the props on the table. Claire bent down with a warm smile and handed Lily a crown-shaped headband. "Do you want to try this one?" she asked softly. Lily nodded with excitement and placed it on her head. Ethan watched the scene quietly. Something about the woman at the booth struck him. She seemed shy yet kind, nervous yet patient. There was nothing forced in the way she treated his daughter. Claire tried to ignore the strange feeling in her chest as she looked at him. She told herself it was only another guest, only another moment to get through. She had no idea that this first meeting was the beginning of something far greater than she could ever imagine. Lily stood in front of the booth with her crown headband tilted slightly to one side. She looked like a little princess, laughing as she pointed to the shiny glasses and feather boas on the table. Claire reached out and helped her pick a pair of bright pink glasses. The girl giggled as she put them on, and her laughter filled the corner of the hall. Ethan stayed close, watching his daughter's excitement. It had been a long time since he had seen her laugh so freely. Work kept him busy, and though he tried to give her attention, there were nights when she felt lonely. Seeing her happy made him feel at peace, and for a moment he forgot about the endless meetings, the late calls, and the heavy responsibility that followed him everywhere. Claire lifted the camera and asked Lily to pose. The little girl twirled with the crown slipping down her forehead, making everyone nearby laugh. Claire clicked the picture and showed it to her. Lily clapped her hands and asked for another one. "You can wear this scarf too?" Claire suggested as she draped a sparkling blue scarf over Lily's shoulders. Lily spun around again, her eyes bright with joy. Ethan found himself smiling too, a smile he had not shown in a long time. He looked at Claire then, really looked at her. Her hair was tied back neatly, a few strands falling around her face. She had a simple dress on, nothing that stood out, yet there was a quiet grace in the way she moved. She looked nervous, as if she was not used to so much attention, but she handled Lily with patience and warmth. When Claire handed him a silly hat and asked if he wanted to join, Ethan shook his head at first. He had not done something playful in years. But Lily tugged on his sleeve and said, "Please, Daddy, just one." So he gave in, placed the hat on his head, and knelt down beside her. Claire lifted the camera again and captured the moment. In the picture, Lily was laughing, Ethan had a soft smile, and Claire could feel something shift in the air. It was as if the camera had frozen a secret that none of them fully understood yet. After the pictures, Lily skipped off to show the photos to her friends. That left Ethan and Claire standing together for the first time. For a few seconds, there was silence between them. She wondered if she should say something, but words felt heavy on her tongue. Finally, he spoke. "You're good with kids," he said in a calm voice. Claire looked surprised. "Oh, thank you. I don't really have much practice. I guess Lily makes it easy." Ethan nodded. His eyes lingered on her, noticing how she avoided direct attention yet carried herself with quiet strength. He felt curious about her, more curious than he had been about anyone in a long time. The music grew louder as the bride and groom entered the hall for their first dance. Guests cheered and the attention of the crowd shifted toward the dance floor. Ethan and Claire stood to the side, a little apart from the rest, as if the world had given them their own space for a brief moment. Claire felt her heart beat faster. She reminded herself that she was only here for a few hours, only standing in for her cousin. She was not supposed to make connections, not supposed to catch the eye of someone like him. Yet something about the way he looked at her made it hard to turn away. Before she could think of another word, Lily came running back and took Ethan's hand. "Daddy, can we go again later?" "She's fun." Ethan looked at Claire once more. "We will come back," he said simply. Then he let Lily pull him toward the tables. Claire watched them walk away. She told herself it was just another guest, just another moment in a busy evening. But deep down, a quiet spark had already been lit, one that she could not explain and could not ignore. The night moved forward with music, laughter, and the steady rhythm of joy filling the wedding hall. Claire stayed behind the booth, arranging props, fixing the lights, and guiding guests as they came and went. She tried to keep herself busy, but her eyes often wandered across the room without her permission. More than once, she found Ethan looking back at her from his table. Each time her heart jumped, and she quickly lowered her gaze as if caught doing something wrong. Lily was the one who kept the thread between them alive. After finishing her meal, she ran back to the booth and asked Claire for more props. Claire helped her choose a shiny silver wand and a pair of star-shaped glasses. The little girl posed happily again, spinning around and laughing with delight. Claire clicked the pictures while Ethan stood nearby, his arms crossed as he watched quietly. "You must really enjoy this," Claire said, kneeling to adjust the glasses on Lily's face. "She does," Ethan replied. His voice was even, but his eyes were soft as they followed his daughter's movements. Claire handed the printed photos to Lily, who ran off again to show her friends. This left Claire and Ethan once more in each other's presence. "You're very patient with her," Ethan said after a pause. Claire shrugged gently. "She makes it easy.
Ow.
She's bright, full of energy." Children remind us to see things in simple ways. Ethan studied her expression, noticing the small smile that touched her lips when she spoke. He realized he had not heard such words in a long time, words that felt honest instead of forced. Something about this woman was different. A group of guests approached the booth, breaking the quiet moment. Claire turned her attention to them, helping them try on hats and glasses, while Ethan stepped aside. Yet even as others laughed and posed, Ethan's gaze lingered on Claire. Following the way she moved with shy grace, always careful not to make herself the center of attention. When the group left, Ethan returned to the booth with Lily holding his hand again. Lily begged for another round of photos, and Claire welcomed her back as though she had been waiting. This time, Claire handed Ethan a feather boa and smiled faintly. "You should wear this too," she teased lightly.
Ice.
Ethan raised an eyebrow, but gave in when Lily begged him to join. Placed the boa over his shoulders, feeling slightly ridiculous, but Lily's laughter made it worth it. Claire clicked the photo, capturing not just a silly moment, but the warmth in Ethan's eyes as he looked at his daughter. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the tightness in his chest, ease. This woman had managed to create a space where he could laugh without thinking of work, where his daughter could shine without fear. He did not know how she did it, but he felt drawn to it. Later, As the band played and more guests filled the dance floor, Ethan stood at the edge of the booth again. Claire was tidying up the props, her hands moving carefully, her mind clearly far away, looked up suddenly, and their eyes met once more. Neither of them spoke, but something unspoken passed between them, like a quiet thread pulling them closer. Claire quickly turned back to her work, her cheeks warm. She reminded herself that he was only a guest, and she was only filling in for her cousin. But no matter how hard she tried, she could not shake the feeling that tonight was different. Something had begun, and she could feel it deep inside, even if she did not want to admit it yet. The wedding grew livelier as the evening went on. The bride and groom moved across the dance floor with laughter and joy. Guests clapped in rhythm, raising their glasses and calling out cheers. Claire stayed at the booth, pretending to focus on her tasks, yet she found her thoughts drifting back again and again to Ethan. She told herself it was only because of his daughter. Lily had been sweet, full of energy, and easy to love. But the truth was harder to ignore. Every time Ethan stood close, every time his voice reached her ears, she felt something she could not explain. It was as though she had known him longer than a few hours, as though his presence had been waiting for her. Claire forced herself to look away when Ethan passed by with a group of friends. They were men in fine suits, men who carried themselves with confidence. She overheard them as they laughed and spoke loudly near the booth. One of them clapped Ethan on the back and said, "You never stop working, do you? Their company is still on your mind." Another added, "That's what makes you the best. Running a whole empire while raising a daughter on your own. I don't know how you do it." Claire froze. She had not expected to hear words like that. She turned slightly, pretending to adjust the props on the table, but her ears caught every word. Ethan shook his head with a small smile. "Tonight is not about work," he said firmly. "It is about my friend. That is why I came." His friends laughed again, but their words remained in Claire's mind. A company. An empire. A man who carried the weight of power and success. She looked at him again, and suddenly saw what she had missed before. The sharpness in his posture, the quiet authority in his eyes, the way others around him seemed to respect him without question. He was not only a father at a wedding, he was someone important, someone far above the world she lived in. Her heart sank. She had thought he was different because he felt simple, approachable, and kind. But now she realized she had been speaking to a man who was not like her at all. She was only a substitute worker at a booth, standing in for her cousin, wearing a borrowed name tag. What would he think if he knew? Claire tried to shake the thoughts away, but they pressed harder with each passing minute. She looked at her own hands, the way they trembled slightly as she handed props to another guest. The laughter of the crowd filled the air, but her chest grew tight. When Ethan returned with Lily, a little while later, Claire forced herself to smile. Lily ran to her with excitement, asking for more photos. Claire guided her gently, helping her wear a bright red hat and handing Ethan another prop. Yet her mind was restless. She wondered if he could sense the change in her mood, if he noticed how her voice shook just a little. Ethan, however, seemed relaxed. He was focused on Lily, encouraging her to strike poses and laughing softly when she did. He glanced at Claire once, his eyes calm and steady, but she quickly looked away. The pictures were taken, the laughter shared, but Claire's heart was no longer as light as before. She could not stop thinking about what she had overheard. Ethan was not simply a man enjoying a wedding with his daughter. He was a CEO, a leader, someone far beyond her reach. When Lily skipped off again, leaving them alone for a moment, Claire lowered her eyes. She told herself that this connection, whatever it was, could not last. It was too fragile, too unreal. Still, when Ethan spoke to her with that gentle tone, part of her wanted to believe in the spark between them. Part of her wanted to forget who he was and remember only how he made her feel. The night carried on, and the glow of lights filled every corner of the hall. Guests were busy on the dance floor, laughter and music rising together. Claire kept her smile steady as she handed out props, but her thoughts were tangled. She could not forget the words she had overheard. Ethan was a man of power, someone who lived in a world she had no part of. Still, when he walked back to the booth with Lily, her heart reacted before her mind could stop it. Lily was holding his hand and skipping, her crown headband slipping down as she moved. The little girl looked at Claire with bright eyes and said, "Can we take more pictures with you?" Claire nodded. She could never say no to the girl. She helped Lily put on a silver cape and handed Ethan a simple mask. He accepted it without complaint, and for a moment Claire forgot who he was outside the hall. She only saw a father and his daughter, sharing joy in small ways. She clicked the photos. She laughed softly. It was not the nervous laugh she had carried earlier, but one that came naturally. Lily struck a pose. Ethan leaned in close, and Claire felt warmth in her chest that pushed away her fears for a little while. When the pictures were done, Lily ran off again, leaving Claire and Ethan standing side by side. For a moment, there was only the sound of the music and the chatter of distant voices. "You are very good with her," Ethan said quietly. Claire looked down at the camera in her hands. "She makes it easy. She's kind and full of life." Ethan studied her for a moment. "Not everyone has patience for children." "You do. She feels safe with you." The words caught Claire off guard. She wanted to answer, but found it hard to speak. After a pause, she finally said, "I do not know if I am patient. I just know what it feels like to want someone to see you. Maybe that is why I try." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "You feel unseen." Claire hesitated. She had never spoken about it to strangers. But his voice carried no judgment, only calm curiosity. Slowly she said, "In my family, I am always compared to others. My cousin is brighter, louder, easier to notice. I am the one in the corner most of the time. People do not mean to ignore me, but they do." Her words hung in the air. Ethan looked at her with a seriousness that made her chest tighten. "I understand," he said finally. "When I lost my wife, people spoke to me about work, about my company, about responsibilities. Few asked how I felt or how my daughter felt. They see the surface, but not the struggle. It can make you feel invisible too." Claire looked at him then, truly looked. He was a man of power, yet in his eyes she saw a weight that went beyond success. She saw loneliness, the kind she had known in her own way. The hall was alive with music, but the space between them felt quiet, as though the world had stepped aside to give them room. They stood together, not saying much, yet something deeper connected them. It was fragile, but real. Lily came running back, breaking the silence with her cheerful voice. She held both their hands and pulled them toward the dance floor. Ethan looked at Claire, and though he said nothing, his gaze told her he wanted her there. Claire's heart trembled. She reminded herself that she was only here for one night, that soon her cousin would return, and she would slip back into her quiet world. But as Lily tugged her forward, she realized she wanted to hold on to this moment a little longer. The music grew louder, and the hall shone with golden lights. Claire followed as Lily pulled her closer to the dance floor, but she stayed at the edge, letting the girl twirl in her small cape. Ethan stood nearby, his eyes moving between his daughter and Claire. There was a calm warmth around them, as if the noise of the hall could not break the quiet bond they shared. Claire smiled, though her chest felt heavy with thoughts she could not shake. She knew the night would end, and she would return to her simple life, while Ethan would walk back into a world of boardrooms and power. She had no place there, and yet her heart was already tied to something she could not name. It was then that her cousin appeared. Out of breath and dressed in a hurry, she rushed toward the booth, her bag slung over her shoulder. Claire's smile faded as she saw her.
"Hey, there you are,"
her cousin said with relief.
"Thank you for covering for me. I knew you would do fine."
Claire's face grew pale. She wanted to ask her cousin to lower her voice, but it was too late. Ethan had stepped closer, and he heard every word. Claire felt the air grow still. She glanced at him, her stomach twisting. His expression did not change much, but his eyes showed a flicker of surprise. Her cousin continued without noticing. "You are better than me at this anyway. The guests probably think you were the one hired. I hope it was not too boring for you." She laughed lightly. Claire forced a small smile and quickly said it was fine. "I will tell you more later." She gave a small nod, hoping her cousin would understand to stop talking. The cousin finally left to greet other guests, leaving Claire standing alone with Ethan. The moment felt sharp, filled with unspoken questions.
"Ow."
Claire lowered her head, unable to look at him. "So you were not supposed to be here," Ethan said softly. Claire swallowed hard. "No, my cousin asked me to cover for her. She had an emergency, and I could not say no." There was silence. The sounds of the wedding faded in her ears as she waited for his response. She thought he might laugh, or turn away, or see her as nothing more than a girl who had stepped into a place that was never hers. "I see," Ethan said at last. His tone was calm, but Claire could not tell what he was truly feeling. Her voice shook as she added, "I am sorry if I made it seem like I belonged here. I did not mean to mislead anyone. I was only trying to help." Ethan looked at her carefully. He saw the way her hands trembled, the way her eyes refused to meet his. She was not pretending to be someone else. She was only a woman caught in a moment she had not expected. But Claire did not know this. She believed he would walk away, that whatever spark had grown between them would end before it could even begin. Lily ran back again, holding the photo she had taken earlier. She showed them proudly to her father. Ethan smiled gently at his daughter, then glanced at Claire. His expression was steady, but inside his mind was turning. Had met many people who chased his title, who cared only for his power. Yet this woman had not even known who he was when she laughed with his daughter. Claire, however, did not let herself hope. She stepped back toward the booth, her chest aching. She told herself it was better this way. Better not to dream of something she could never have. Still, as she looked at Ethan holding Lily's hand, she wished the night could last a little longer. She wished the truth had not come out so soon. The wedding slowly began to quiet as the evening drew late. The music softened. Some guests had left, and others gathered near the tables to talk. Claire stood behind the booth, packing the last of the props. Her cousin had taken over, speaking cheerfully with a group of guests, leaving Claire free but restless. She slipped out of the hall for fresh air. Outside, the night was calm. The garden lights glowed softly and a cool breeze brushed her face. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared at the ground. Her chest was heavy with regret. She wished Ethan had not overheard the truth. She wished she could have stayed invisible, just a simple girl helping at a wedding, instead of someone who had been caught pretending. The sound of footsteps reached her ears. She looked up and saw Ethan walking toward her. His dark suit still looked sharp, his step steady, but his expression carried a gentleness that made her heart race. "I was looking for you," he said quietly. Claire lowered her gaze. "You should be inside. The night is still going." "I did not want to be inside," he replied. "I wanted to speak with you." She shook her head. "There is nothing to say. You know, now that I was only filling in, I do not belong here. I do not belong near you." Ethan stopped a few steps away. His voice was calm, yet firm. "Do you really think I care about that?" Her eyes lifted to his, full of doubt. "Why would you not care? You are a man who lives in another world. You are someone important." "I am only a substitute who happened to stand in the right place for one night." Ethan's gaze did not waver. "I am important to people who care about money and titles. But that is not who I am to my daughter. To her, I am only a father who tries." Tonight she smiled more than she has in months. "And that was because of you." Claire's chest tightened. She wanted to believe his words, but fear held her back. "You say that now, but when the night ends, you will go back to your life. I will go back to mine. People like us do not stay connected." Ethan took a slow step closer. "Then tell me why it feels like we are connected already." "From the moment I saw you with Lily, something pulled me toward you. I cannot explain it, but it is real. Can you tell me you did not feel it too?" Claire opened her mouth, but no words came. The truth was in her eyes. She had felt it from the start, a thread that tied her to him in ways she could not deny. Ethan reached out, not to take her hand, but to let his words reach her clearly. "I do not care that you were standing in for someone else. I do not care that you think you are less than me. What I saw tonight was a woman with kindness, patience, and a heart that my daughter trusts. That is worth more than any title I hold." At that moment, Lily's voice rang out from the doorway. She ran to them with her small shoes tapping the stone path. She grabbed Claire's hand without hesitation and said, "Daddy, can she come with us? I like her." Ethan looked at Claire, his eyes steady. "I would like that too, but only if she wants to." Claire felt tears press at the corners of her eyes, though she held them back. She looked at Lily's innocent face, then at Ethan's patient expression. In their eyes, she saw not judgment but hope, a hope she had never thought could be hers. Her voice trembled as she answered, "I want to." The garden lights glowed around them, as if the night itself had blessed the moment. Ethan smiled and Lily squeezed Claire's hand tighter. For the first time in a long time, Claire felt seen, not as a substitute, not as a shadow, but as someone who mattered. And with that, their story began, bound by the quiet string of fate that had led them together.